Hello, this is Mr. Mackey from the Together Organization. Today our topic is improving grades one semester at a time. We're going to look at trying to help parents and students understand why it is important to ensure that their 9 weeks grades are done with efficiency and with fidelity to make sure that they are able to do well for the entire semester. So we're going to look at courses that are generally assigned to high school, maybe middle school students, but we're going to use these for our lesson today. So the courses that we're looking at is ELA, which in some places you may call it English, but the same representation of the course. Mathematics, there will be a science course, a social science course, some people call it social studies, world languages, CTAE, which represents your pathway course, and elective courses. All right, so what we're going to look at now is we're going to look at a set of grades that a student may receive. So we're going to look at the first 9 weeks. Now for the first 9 weeks, let's say the student in ELA made an A B in math, a C in science, a B in social science, a B in world languages, an A in CTAE, and then a C in the elective course. All right, these are not bad grades, they're not good grades, they're a nice, good representation, not an AB on the roll, but they are above, they are looking pretty decent grade-wise, and they will probably have around a B average. Okay, but let's move a little further. Let's move a little further. Now let's look at this situation where the kid did not consider the second 9 weeks to be as important, because this student decided that, hey, I had an A the first 9 weeks, so I don't have to work as hard in my ELA class, so the student decided to just take a break. And that happens sometimes with parents and students. You do not want that to happen because it can be very detrimental to your final grade. So the kid had an A the first 9 weeks, second 9 weeks came along, had a C, and it was a 71 average. And so what we're going to look at, we're going to see how we would find the average of that student's grade for the semester. We're going to look at that student's semester grade. Well, in order to find a semester grade, what you have to do is this. You have to take the average of both of the grades, because sometimes we get caught up in the letter grade and we don't look at the average. But when you're thinking about your semester grade, it's very important that you look at your averages, because that is sometimes more important than that letter grade only. So we'll show you that in just a second. So we will take the two grades, the first 9 weeks, which was a 90, and we're going to add it to the second 9 weeks, which was a 71. And then since we have two grades, we got to find the average of these two, so we're going to divide it by 2 because we have two grades. Okay, so when you add those together, you get 161. So that 161, you're going to have to divide by 2. When you divide 161 by 2, you get an 80.5. Well, an 80.5 is representative of a B. So the kid for the ELA made a B for the semester. Not bad, all right? And then for the mathematics course, the kid had an 80 plus a 68. So you're going to add those two and you're going to divide by 2. When you add those together, you get 148 points. So that's 148 points. We're going to take the 148 and divide it by 2. Well, you divide 2 into that, you're going to get 74. Again, we just simply said 68 plus 80. And when we got that, we got 148 points. We take to the 148 points divided by 2. 2 can go into 14 7 times. 2 can go into 8 4 times. So that's why the kid had a 74 average, which in turn becomes a C. So the kid has a C average. All right, now, for science, the kid had a 79 plus an 84. And we're going to divide that by 2. Well, when we divide that by 2, it's going to be a 163. Well, so we're going to have 163 points, and that we're going to have to take and divide by 2. All right, so when we divide it by 2, we're going to get that's going to give us an 80, looks like an 81.5. So 81.5. So 81.5 is going to be a C. No, it's going to be a B. So that kid gets a B in science, okay? And I say that because it had a C and a B, but because the C and the average for the C was so high, and as for the B was okay, that's why he ended up, when the average is out, it turns out to stay a B. So not a bad job for science. In social science, the kid had an 81, so we're going to take 81. Let's do that over. Let's erase that. We're going to take the 81 we're going to add it to the 50, and we're going to divide that by 2. And that's going to give us 131 points. We got to take that 131 and divide it by 2. So when we divide 131 by 2, that's going to give us a 65. It's going to give us 65.5. If I'm not mistaken on that. Yeah, so it'd be a 65.5. And if you have a D where you live, it would be a D. But in where I am currently residing, that would be an F. So that would be anything lower than a 70 is an F. So that would be an F average. So for social studies, the kid ends up with an F average. Okay. So then we're gonna look first. We're gonna look at world languages. For the world languages, well, you're gonna take the 85 and add it to the 80. And we're going to divide that by 2, and that's going to give us 165 points. And since that's 165 points, we're going to take that and divide it by 2, and that's going to give us an 82.5, which is going to be a B. So for world language, the kid ends up with a B for the semester. We're going to look at the CTAE. Now, the kid did outstandingly well the first 9 weeks, and he had an A. This student had an A. He or she had an A. And so it was a 91, but it was a low A. And then they did not work like they needed to work the second 9 weeks. They made it 45 because they decided not to turn in a project. They just didn't do the work. And then because of that, this is what happens. You're going to take that 91 and you're going to add it to the 45. Well, I mean, I had an A. There's no way I'm going to fail the course. All right, so let's see if that's realistic. All right, so that's going to give us 146, it looks like. No, 136. It'd be 136, not 146. It's going to be 136 points. Let's make sure we look at that. So that's going to be 136 points. And we're going to divide that by 2. Okay, I was trying to help the kid out. So no, this kid is going to end up with a 68 average. Well, a 68 average, again, where I am currently residing, a 68, anything lower than a 70 is an F. So this kid went from an A first 9 weeks and had an F the last 9 weeks. So he ended up hurting him or herself by ending up with a 68, which would give that student an F for CTAE. So the student failed that for the semester. And then we're going to look at the last one. We have a 72 plus an 80. And divide that by 2. That's going to give us 152 points. We're going to divide that by 2. And then we divide that by 2, we're going to see that this kid has a 76, like a 76. All right, so the kid has a 76 average, so that would be a C. So we're going to go back and look at all my grades that we had, and we're going to go across. So for ELA, the kid ends up with a B for the semester. For math, the kid ends up with a C. In science, the kid ends up with a B. The kid ends up with a social science, an F. World languages, a B. CTAE, an F. And then for elective course, a C. So now let's think, this kid, you would think this kid would have, really in the beginning, this kid was looking at a B average that first 9 weeks. Because that was a pretty decent grades, because that A and that C would turn out to be a B, and that's a B, so that's already a B average, B, and then A and C would have made it a B, so that kid has a B average. Second 9 weeks, the kid did not work as hard as he needed to. The kid stopped working, actually, and he worked less intensively as he should have, and because of that, the grades suffered. So let's see what happened with this kid in this time. This kid had went down to a C, an F, a B, an F, a B, an F, a B. So this kid's grade really tanked, and it shows here. Now, it shows here that, you know, because of the first time they were able to save a little bit of the horrible situation that could have occurred. But still, let me explain something to you. What I like to tell students who I work with on different capacities, my Together members specifically, and I'll make sure they understand that. Moving into where we had a meeting, we talked about that semester system, because that was a very important meeting that we had. And I told them that you cannot and you should not get anything lower than a C. Now, our expectations is they are very high. And our kids understand that they're supposed to make all A's and B's, and that's what we look for. But there's always an opportunity for a kid to not make a B. So what we tell them is you must have at least a 75, because with the 75, no matter what the situation, if you maintain a 75 in each class as a minimum grade, there's no way that you can fail for the semester. But let's look at this kid. So let's see what the kid's GPA is now. We looked at what the semester grades were, but let's look at what these semester grades average out to be for that kid's overall GPA for that first semester. So we know a B is going to give the person 3 points. We know a C is going to give them 2 points. We know a B is going to give them 3. We know an F is going to be 0 points. We know that B is going to give them 3. We know that F is going to give them 0. And we know that C is going to give them 2. So we're going to add up all these points. That's going to be 3, 5, 8. 8 plus 3 is 11. Plus 2 is going to give them 13. So we're going to divide 7 into 13 because of the fact that we know that there were 7 grades. If we see them 7 grades and there were 13 points that a student achieved. So we can't go into 2 times because 2 can go into 14 2 times. I mean, 7 can go into 14 2 times, but 7 cannot go into 13 2 times. So that means it's going to be a 1. So the 7 can go into 13 1 time. Minus 7 going to leave a 6 decimal. Bring out your 0. Bring that decimal up here. 7 can go into 60 rather, 8 times. So this kid's going to have a 1.8 GPA, which a 1.8 GPA is not a good GPA, as we all know. And a 1.8 GPA is going to give this kid, if you have a D where you are, it would give him a D average. But where I am, a 1.8 going to give this kid an F overall GPA for the first semester. Even though he has some B's, some C's, some B's here and there, and but the problem is, if you were to look at his overall GPA for that semester, it's a 1.8, which is not what a kid wants to have. And let me just say this to my kids who are going to be, my students rather, or students out there, and parents. If your kid is going to be an athlete, you want to make sure they have 2.3 minimum GPA when you start looking at the NCAA clearinghouse and things of that nature. That'll be another video, but I hope this video enlightened you and helped some of y'all out if you had questions about your semester grades. But anyway, we thank you for watching this video, and we hope it was beneficial, and we hope it has a great impact on the student and the parent. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.